Have anybody got to ask a question that makes them clam up? If you like me, I don't like taking tests. But today, you don't need a pen, you don't need some paper, you don't need a book. All you need is the ledger of your mind and the blueprint of your heart. And I guarantee you, you can answer this question. And the question is simply, what's your story? Now, I know, Kenneth, there's a lot of questions that you have been answered or asked in your lifetime. But I think this is the question that may determine whether you pass or fail. And the question is simply, Pastor Smith, what's your story? Everybody got a story. You got a story, I got a story. And the question is, what's your story? Now, I do realize that your story may not ever make the bestseller list, but you do have a story. Your story may not be as exciting as Jonah. Your story may not be like Abraham's. Your story may not be like Noah, but you do have a story. I discovered that we may not be like Ruth, who saved the spies by simply saying, your God is my God. And when you come into this land, remember me. Your story may not be like that of Esther, who said, if I die, I die, but I'm going to see the king. Your story may not be like David, who took a slingshot and a rock and killed some giants. Your story may not be like Abraham, who is the father of the faithful. Your story may not be like Moses, who stood on the banks of the Red Sea, held out his rod and said, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Your story may not be like Joshua, who walked around the walls of Jericho 7 days, and on the 7th day, he walked around 7 times, and on the 7th time, he let a loud shout, and the wall came tumbling down. Your story may not be like Samson, who was the strongest man to ever live. Your story may not be like Gideon, who was hiding from the Midianites, scary and uncourageable, but yet one day, he got the sword of Gideon in his hand, and he began to roast the Philistines. Your story may not be like Isaiah, who got a lazy boy seat and sat at the cross and said that he was wounded for our transgression, he was bruised for our iniquity. The chastisement of my peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Your story may not be like Isaiah, who sat and saw in the year that King Uzziah died, God sitting on the throne, having it going on. Your story may not ever be like Zechariah, who saw the vision of the Lord and said his will is a sign of a will. Your story may not ever make the bestseller list. Your story may not ever make it to the big screen, but you still got a story. And my question today is, what's your story? If you had to title your story today, if you had to name your story today, what would be the title of your story? Would it be Secret Rendezvous? Or would the title of your story be There's No Question What God Can Do? Would the title of your story be Gotta Get Paid? Or would the title of your story be God Is All the World to Me? Would the title of your story be I Am In It For Myself? Or would the title be of your story that I'm serving the Lord? What is the title of your story? You may not like it, but you still got a story. And when you woke up this morning, your pages was white and clean. What goes on this chapter today? What's your story? If I can give you anything to help you write your story, I will give you the gift of praise. But it's something I can't give you. It's something that I just can't put in your lap and you'll have it for a moment. If I can give you anything today to help you write your story, it will not be a ballpoint pen. It will not be a number 2 pencil. It will not be a laptop or a computer. If I give you anything to write your story today, it will be the power of praise. Because I discovered a story ain't a story until you put praise in it. A story ain't a story until you learn how to give God thanks. I discovered that you living a meaningless life and you ain't living it with praise in your heart and praise on your lips. If I can give you anything to write your story, it will be the power of praise. But let me give you some writing tips today. Let me tell you some tips that'll help you write your story as you write it with praise. Tip number 1, own up to the raw material God has always given you. God has given you some raw material to help you write your story. You see, Jerome, you can't be like me and I can't be like you. But my daddy told me a long time ago, you got to play the uniform that you was given. You see, you might want a white uniform, but God gave you a black uniform. You might want a skinny uniform, but God gave you a big bone uniform. Whatever uniform you got, you need the raw material God has already given you. I tell you right now, God has given you everything you need to write your story. Can I get a witness? Not only use the raw material that God has given you to write your story, I want to I want you to make sure that your story is in line with God's story. And if you do that, I guarantee you will have a great story. It reminds me of the story of Jonah. We talk about a lot of people in the Bible, but one thing we kind of shy away from is a hard-headed preacher. But nobody likes a hard-headed preacher. I discovered that Jonah was a racist. I discovered that Jonah was hard-headed. I discovered that Jonah was a lot of things. When I read the end of Jonah's life, I also discovered that he was a praiser. I discovered that you can be messed up from the floor. As long as you start praising God, He will deliver. Do I have it? What's your story? You see, this is what they asked Jonah while he was on the boat. They asked Jonah a series of questions. They asked him, who are you? What is your occupation? What country are you from? They began to ask Jonah a lot of stories. What they was trying to get him to do is to tell him who he was. What are you doing on this boat? Where do you come from? What's your story? And see, Jonah had to face these questions. And these questions got Jonah put in the belly of a whale. And I don't want anybody to be swallowed by fish today. So I want to ask you the same question that was asked to Jonah. The first question they asked is, what is your preoccupation? In other words, why are you sleeping on the job? See, Jonah should have been doing what God called him to do. But instead of doing what God called him to do, he was on the bottom of the boat sleeping. Everything you can't do when God is giving you a job, when God is giving you something to do, when God is giving you a ministry, you can't be found sleeping on the job. I discovered that what hurts a lot of leaders is they try to get too much rest when God has given them a mission in life. What are you doing sleeping? Then they asked him, what is your profession? What is your occupation? What is your job description? Jonah had to tell him that I am a preacher. And I believe when Jonah had to fess up to